Good evening, and welcome to the St. Petersburg by Night podcasting network. Tonight, we present to you our behind-the-scenes show, After Dark.
Good evening and welcome to the St. Pete by Night Twitch channel where we play St. Petersburg by Night, a massive multiplayer 5th edition World of Darkness chronicle set in the city of St. Petersburg, Florida. My name is Kent, also known as Michikent on all social media, but you shouldn't go follow that because really I don't post there anymore. But what you should do is go follow St. Pete by Night on all of the social media listed down below and in the description of the video, where you can get all of the fun, amazing content that our community creates about our love of World of Darkness and Vampire the Masquerade and Hunter the Reckoning and Werewolf the Apocalypse. This, however, is After Dark, which is our behind-the-scenes show where we talk to the movers and shakers of St. Pete by Night, but also the movers and shakers in the World of Darkness. And guys, I gotta tell you, we have an incredible guests tonight. Probably, in my mind, one of the most prestigious guests we've ever had the joy of having on this particular show. Of course, I'm talking about Rachel J. Wilkinson, the creator, director, mastermind, maniac behind Port Saga, which is an audio drama set within the World of Darkness, specifically Vampire the Masquerade. You can find Port Saga on anywhere you can find podcasts, but you can also find Rachel on racheljwilkinson.com, and we are going to be talking all about that as well as the Port Saga journey and much more tonight. But first, let's take an opportunity for Rachel to introduce herself. Rachel, take it away.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. It's good to be here. I'm so excited to have this conversation. I'm Rachel J. Wilkinson, and creator of Port Saga, vampire writer, line editor for Dune, and also the senior writer and designer for Studio Hermitage right now. So doing a lot of things.
And honestly, the resume just goes on and on and on. And the more I dug into what you've done, the things you've been a part of, the more and more mind blown I had gotten by what I uncovered. You're an award-winning writer. You are or were one of the story leads of The Night in Question, which was one of the biggest LARP events in the vampire community, working on the Dune projects. You're even a writer on several official World of Darkness books, including one of the stories or chronicles that they released recently out to the public to get. I think it's absolutely amazing how much you've accomplished and how much of a centerpiece in my mind you are to this kind of modern world of darkness. So I would say let's start with how you discovered the world of darkness. How did you get involved with all of this? How did you even come upon the game in its origin?
Well, I'm gonna embarrass myself immediately. So my first introduction to Vampire the Masquerade was as a high schooler. And it was from an ex-boyfriend. He wanted to take me to the table, and the first character I ever created was a Setite. So
Right into the deep end. Okay.
right
Yeah.
into the deep end,
Yeah.
had no idea. I was like, "Ah, snakes are cool. Let's do some snaky shit." And I remember it was me and there was one other woman at the table. She played Toreador, shocking no one. And I think the gentleman at the table got so upset with us because we wanted to go shopping. And it was just so, I mean, it was so stereotypical and I'm so embarrassed about it now. But they wanted to do this, really intense prince's court. And me and the other woman looked at each other. It's like, okay, well, clearly we have to have something to wear. At you know, let's and then, and all the guys were like banging their heads on the table, like, why did we bring the girls here? This sucks.
Well, I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna contradict those guys by saying, in Vampire, in the world of darkness, especially Vampire, style is such an important part of the game. I mean,
It is.
it's
It
so
was like I
fundamental.
inherently knew in that moment that this is what it was. And in fact, you were mentioning Love Bites. Love Bites is the New Year's Eve giveaway that they did. And the first section of that is here is your style. Here is your shopping trip. Here is your, the thing that you
Right, exactly. I mean, you can't make a good first impression twice. So if you're going to be introduced to the
No.
prince, if you're going to be a part of a court, like you have to have a style to match that entire experience. So it's so important to make a good impression, and I think that that's something that is really unique to the world of darkness, and especially Vampire the Masquerade is like, if you play D&D, yeah, you're wearing armor, or and some DMs might get into that kind of detail, but for Vampire, it is so fundamental to not only plan out your outfit in a specific way, but to also pay attention to other people's outfits because there's
Yes.
so much story in the clothes they wear. I'm showing my inner Toreador, the little bit of Toreador that's inside me with this, but it is important. So, not to date ourselves too terribly, this probably would have been during the initial boom of Vampire the Masquerade, I'm guessing, when
Mhm.
when this was a thing.
Oh,
Uh
yes.
what was that experience like for you? Had you had a lot of TTRPG experience before that, or was this kind of your first?
Oh, no, it was the first time. I just remember, gosh, I had this boyfriend and he would disappear one night a week, on the weekend. I'd be like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, we're playing this game." They played Shadowrun, they played D&D, they played Vampire the Masquerade, and they thought Vampire the Masquerade was the one that they could bring the girls to. And so we went, we did, I think, oh gosh, we maybe played 2 or 3 times, maybe, whatever the run of that campaign was or what that little chronicle was. And but yeah, and then I don't know. I was hooked. I was hooked. And I that was sort of my first foray into gaming at all. Um after Shortly after that I was in, oh gosh, I'm dating myself even further. Do you remember Muds?
Oh, I love. Okay, yes, I absolutely remember Muds, and people who've watched this show regularly have heard me talk about it at great length. But yes, I was huge into Muds back in that time period as well.
Back in the long ago, dark ages,
Yeah,
yes.
we
So it
yes.
went from Vampire the Masquerade, and then I did a bunch of mudding, and then I got into the MMOs. I think Asheron's Call was my very first MMO. And so it was so funny because it kind of went full circle because I realized as I was playing Asheron's Call, I started LARPing Asheron's Call kind of. Like, I
Okay.
don't know how to explain this. It wasn't like we would play, and then the people that were playing, we would go to this diner, and then we would talk about the playing that we just did. Like
Absolutely. Oh,
it was
yes.
so meta. And so then
Absolutely.
yes, and so what I started to do is used to take screenshots and little videos, and I was a video editor at the time, so I would edit these little videos of our characters doing things. There was no YouTube. There was no way to
No,
share
of
this.
course not. This was
This
for
was just like
you.
me
This
and
was
my
just for
six
you and
nerdy
your
friends
friends. Yeah.
doing stuff. But I realized that I was craving immersion in some sort of way. Like I wanted to be experiencing the thing as as the character themselves, or the stories as the characters themselves, which eventually led me to LARPing. And so and in Vampire the Masquerade came full circle, because that was then my first LARP, was going to Chicago. The
Wow.
I
Okay.
think it was the Camarilla fan club at the time. I mean, it's changed names like 3 times.
Right.
I had I think I only did like one world once or twice, but it was Camarilla fan club. They had a Chicago chapter. I was living in the cornfields. I was like, I'm gonna go to the big city and try to LARP in Chicago. And I mean, and I loved it. I loved it. It was amazing. It was such a good time. We were sort of, talking a little bit earlier before we started about how many friends I have made through Vampire.
Hmm.
Um, my husband exists because of Vampire. That going to Chicago, like I was talking to him, being like, "Is your character gonna, bodyguard me if I, get into trouble with the thing?" And
But that's the beauty of, I think, TTRPGs as a whole, and then even LARPs, is that it's got a very communal feel, and it does create connections. And despite some of the reputation that World of Darkness has garnered from those days in LARP settings, I think still overall there's something beautiful and pure and wonderful and creatively stimulating about the whole process. So I would ask this question as kind of a follow up. Did you have any kind of theater background, whether it was high school or community theater or
of
anything like?
course I
Okay,
did.
all right. Well,
Of course I did.
like recognizes like. What can I say? And I think that
One
LARPing
theater
is,
kid recognizes another.
yeah, LARPing especially calls to theater kids. Anybody who has a love of improv or building character or storytelling, like that's absolutely going to be right up their alley. So when did you discover that you had such a knack for writing? When did writing become a passion of yours as well? Was it before that, or was it kind of because of that?
Well, I would have to say, I well, this is what's so kind of interesting in the Port Saga adjacent world. I started out being a pianist. So I started out in high school, and I thought I was going to be a concert pianist. This is what I was going to go to school to do, and I was going to like, this is the thing I was going to do. And while I was trying to cultivate that career, which started, at I don't know, age 12, or, whenever you start learning how to play piano, I became a piano teacher for a little so when you hear Titus Reed as a piano teacher, no,
Hey, you got to put some of yourself into your
I'm
art. What can I
embarrassing
say?
myself, yes. But at that same time, I started getting into writing that high school, 14, 15, 16. And there was a moment. So here's the moment life changed. And it's so funny because I don't know, we just finished watching Dark Matter. I don't know if you've watched this
I
show.
love Dark Matter. Love
Okay,
it.
so this is my Dark Matter moment. I graduated from high school. I was going into my freshman year of college, and I was trying to get into schools. And I had two schools I was looking at. I was looking at Northern Illinois University and Augustana College. I'm a Midwestern girl. It's all
Me
Illinois,
too. I'm a Midwestern boy from Michigan originally, so yep.
Yes, right? Okay, so, I had my piano audition at Northern. This was to get into the, piano program in Northern, and I had submitted, writing to Augustana for a scholarship. So these 2 things were going at the same time. And basically what happened is when I walked into my piano audition, I froze. I bombed in a way that is obviously has haunted me for 30 years. But I started the piece because it was all memories. I started the piece and I forgot the piece. I started the piece again and I forgot it. And imagine the entire, musical faculty judging you in this moment. I started a third time and I could not get through. I couldn't I couldn't get through the first two lines. And so I just said, "Thank you very much," and walked out, and of course, bawled my eyes out, right? I
Right.
sat I
Yeah.
sat on the curb and I realized I just ruined my life. Like that was the chance and it was gone. And then at that same time, Augustana was looking at the writing, and they came back and they said, "We want to give you a scholarship. We want to give you this prize to come write with us. Come to the creative writing program here." So, if you want to know why I'm a writer and not a concert pianist, it is because I bombed my audition and somebody said, "No, we like you." So, like it was sort of, but do you understand that there's a alternate universe
Yeah,
where the
you're a
opposite happened?
pianist. Yeah. And
Where I did amazing in that audition, and Augustana couldn't have cared less about my writing, you know?
well, and we're gonna get to this a little bit when we're talking about Port Saga specifically, but what I love the way you still bring in that music, that love for music into Port Saga and how important a part it plays in the story of Port Saga. But I'm gonna go into a lot about Port Saga in a little bit. I still want to talk about the origin story here because in my mind, you're a World of
You're getting
Darkness
deep cuts,
superhero.
dude. You're getting some
I'm
deep
so
cuts.
excited for it. I'm here for it. So okay, what really appealed to you about Vampire the Masquerade specifically in terms of gaming? Because there's so many games out there. There's so many opportunities. There were less in our heyday, but there was still Dungeons and Dragons, which is the obvious go-to for a lot of people. World of Darkness was still, even though it was very popular, it was still a very niche game. What about Vampire specifically really called to you and did you connect with other than it being your first game or introduction?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to be said for it's your first game. It's just like your first love. It's your first crush. All of those things. There's always going to be kind of a warm place in your heart for it. But I think it was also um, just the uh, just the idea that it was cool to look cool. And if you were a nerd in the '90s, it was a little rough. I would not say maybe not as rough as a nerd in the '80s, but in the '90s, it was a tough thing,
It was very
and
tough.
to like what you like, and so I think there was something that felt empowering in it. I was able to connect to the fantasy. I desperately wanted to be cool. I mean, my goodness,
Oh, for
and
sure.
I and knew how desperately uncool I actually was. So I think this idea that you could just be like, I'm a dark creature of the night,
Yeah, oh, for sure. Like that was it though. Like I think that the element of role playing ties back all the way to make believe we had as children and growing up. Is just the concept that you can be something different than what you are. And I think that makes a lot of people into theater kids and actors, but it also makes a lot of people into role players, especially if they're really nervous or have stage fright or can't do the theater thing. This is another outlet that allows us, even in our adult years, to still play make believe and still have this opportunity to encourage parts of ourselves that we would usually keep tamped down, like our creativity and our confidence. I mean, I've never felt more confident than in some of the characters I've played
Oh,
in
absolutely.
World of Darkness Chronicles. Like when I'm a prince who could, destroy everyone and everything, that just brings a sense of confidence to the person playing it. And I think that it's such a cool experience to have. So what was your LARPing experience like for you? Like getting the idea of taking this not just out of, sitting around a table with friends, but to dressing up, to going out to Chicago and to,
Oh yeah, it was it
surrounding
was so
yourselves with
scary.
strangers and everything. What was that like and what encouraged you to take that leap?
I you know, so I don't know how you may know this a little bit or other viewers might know about this, but you probably understand rural Midwestern life.
100%.
And my hometown had 18,000 people in it. I at one point while I was there, I literally lived surrounded by corn. I mean, it was just a very small place.
Mhm.
And I think that it was a place that you could also be weird in, though. So that was kind of nice that you didn't have
Yeah.
to worry too much about the world around you. It was pretty safe. You could do some really dumb things as a high schooler and you weren't going to die, like
Yep,
it was,
absolutely.
it
Climb the
was it,
water tower, go cow tipping, do whatever because you just get
yes,
to
there
be
was
out of
I mean
yep.
there was the TPing the friend's house,
Yep.
all this kind of stuff. And so I think that um I I just think that I wanted something more. I just wanted to have something bigger, but I didn't know how to express that. And so I was living in a very small town and so it was like I guess you could say like mm, I don't know, you're unconscious
Mhm.
maybe. Unconsciously wanted these things, could not articulate any of it, couldn't make a strategy of pursuing anything. So I just think again this idea of here was this thing that was going to take me into the city, and so I would go and do it, and I would be this other person in a way, and or I only had to be me for about 5 minutes, and then
No,
I
for
could
sure.
and
Yeah,
then
you
I could
could
be this other person. And I also found I am somewhat uh uh, desperately introverted, I guess I should say. It was like I was gonna say I'm somewhat introverted.
a
No,
lot
I'm
of us
kind of.
are. Yeah.
And so it was a way to go into a situation that was social and have a thing to talk about. I could talk about whatever we were role playing in that moment. But then, much like playing the MMO Asheron's Call, talking about the game afterward, you could go after and talk about the game afterward. And so you had all of these people that were sort of into the same thing as you were, and it wasn't dumb or weird or boring. I mean,
Right.
we were all sort of interested in what was going on. So I think that's what was the initial hook. I suddenly went from having this little tiny pool of people that I knew to in some ways an entire organization of folks, and being able to travel the country when you start going to conventions or you start visiting other games or you start making character connections with other people. And so it just kind of broke open the boundaries of the little town I was living in.
Absolutely. And I think there are a lot of activities that kind of have that same draw. Sports is a big one. Going to a sporting event or, participating in some sort of hobby or general interest activity. When you have that connective interest, that thing that everybody at this particular event has in common, it can really make you feel part of something. And I had plenty of late night all night Denny's rants and
Oh yes.
Waffle House and stuff like that, where you'd go to these places after you'd already spent like anywhere from 4 to 36 hours with these people. I did weekend long LARPs,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I would spend 3 days in a row with these people. But I'd still want to hang out with them. I'd still want to talk about it. And so we'd go to the diner and spend another 6 hours, sipping coffee and talking about the experience. And I think when you have that something like TTRPGs or LARPs, there's so much to talk about. Like you can never run out of topics. And then you're talking about ideas about what you want to do next. And it just keeps rolling, and having such a strong interest in common with everyone you surround yourself with is so nice. It's just
It was also just feeling like, oh, I'm with my people now.
yes. Yes. Well, and especially from a rural situation where it's like, if you're lucky, maybe another person in the area likes that thing, but you're probably not going to hear about it until later, like, or ever at all. And to go to a place where everyone there shares this thing, everyone has this thing in common. It's such an incredible experience. So talk to me about the Chicago LARP and what your first impressions that you can remember were of walking into it, because I think we have probably two drastically different experiences. When I think about
Really?
a
I
LARP
kind
in
of I want to
Chicago,
hear about your experience.
I will, but I want to hear yours first about what it was like going to this Chicago LARP, traveling into the big city. What do you remember about the experience?
Well, I remember just being nervous to the point of shaking. Like I remember, but also being excited about it. And what was really nice is that they were welcoming. It was a challenge to kind of understand what was going on because they were sort of in the midst of their chronicle. They were in the midst of their stories. And so being a new person is always hard. I didn't even realize how hard it was. Like somebody said how hard it was now, or would you do it again? Of course I would, but I was not necessarily prepared for how difficult it would be to get into those stories. And so what I ended up doing is just really kind of watching what was going on around me and seeing what the other folks were doing around me. And I remember, and I cannot remember this guy's name, but he was playing the prince and he was rolling deep in people. Like and he had all of the charisma and exuding all the power that, and he was a gangrel. I do remember he was a gangrel. Was his name Raven? I think it might have been Raven. But it was like this guy was probably the nerdiest guy you ever met in the world, but he was so cool. Like he was so cool. I was just watching this like this guy is so cool.
They're the celebrity at the event because
Right,
they know what
right.
they're
And
doing. They're established. Absolutely.
and I've had a couple of moments like that in LARP, and I actually, like I said, I don't remember the guy's name. I don't. Somebody in the world, if they ever see this, they'll remind me of who this person was. But I, there are a couple of times in LARP where you have a player who just takes over the room, and there was something about that was kind of magical. And so in this Chicago instance, it was this guy. He walked through the room. And I think there was something, it reminds me, I think it was who played Elizabeth in the movie? Was that Gwyneth Paltrow or Kate Blanchett? Kate
Kate
Blanchett.
Blanchett, yes.
So I remember there's some sort of story with Kate Blanchett where they were trying to decide if they were going to give her this part. And she's like, "Well, we don't know if you're royal enough. We don't know if you have the power or, to really portray this character." And she said, "Give me an entourage. Give me a retinue. Put people around me and you'll see it." And that's what happened when she suddenly had ladies in waiting, and that's what this guy had. The guy had the court rolling with him, right?
That's
And
so
so
cool.
so you would have, gosh, there might have been, I think there might have been about 40 of us, 40 or 50 of us. It was actually a pretty sizable game, and he was 10 people deep and people parting the waters for him. And so not only did he have the charisma in the moment and sort of exuding his own kind of confidence, but everybody was showing that deference. And there have been a couple of moments like that I wanted that moment for myself.
Yes. Yeah, when you get that immersive LARP experience, you do feel transported. You do feel like you're somewhere else when you can see that kind of behavior. I was part of a D&D LARP for many, many years that was actually out in 40 acres of woods that was structures built on it. It was land that was solely dedicated to this LARP. And going out there was the most transformative experience because you couldn't see the city. There were no buildings or like power lines or anything. You were literally out in the middle of nowhere, and walking out onto that land, you just forgot the real world. And you got to
Yeah.
see the costuming and these people carrying themselves with confidence and armor and all this. So, Vampire's the same way. Now, my first Vampire LARP experience was something a little contrary to that because it was being run at the University of Michigan at the Student Center on like the second floor. And this LARP, while there was a lot of amazing things about it, it was definitely not the full experience because like people had note cards that said what they were wearing, and like you're standing in
This
a
is a
student
suit.
center, yeah, but you're supposed to like think you're on the streets of Detroit, and it didn't have the same experience for me. But since then I've been to other LARPs That absolutely did. The Darkness Emergent LARP out in New Orleans in November of last year.
Did you go to
Incredible.
the Chicago one just
I
passed?
didn't. I was actually out of town at the time, but I'll probably be at the Vegas one for their next one. But yeah, just the setting is everything. The costumes are everything. The props are everything. So I have gotten to have the good, in-depth, immersive vampire
Good,
experience,
good,
but I've
good, good.
also seen the opposite side of just like a bunch of friends playing make believe, but not even taking the effort to dress up. Um,
I've been
so,
there too.
but
I've
that's
been there too.
that's incredible. That's a great introduction to go to Chicago and to see that. I'm sure that
Well,
only
and
fueled it.
they had done it in a hotel, and so we were playing in the lobby and some of the conference rooms, and it had a bit more zhuzh, I guess you could say. It wasn't people at a student center, and I have played those games. I've played
Oh, for
those
sure.
games where the people are in chairs with the note cards on, and
Yeah. Oh, well, when you need a hit, you're gonna take anything you can get to find it. When that itch is crawling, I get it. I absolutely get it. Like you'll take what you can get. I mean, I've played in diners playing Vampire the Masquerade with an impromptu game that was put together just because I hadn't played in so long. I really wanted to. So I get it, but yeah, I mean to see the fully done up experience is so incredible. It's so incredible, and I'm glad you got to experience that. So before we get into Port Saga, which is what I want to talk about next, I want to mention our giveaway that we're doing tonight. Tonight we have a giveaway from Champs Tramps, one of our incredible sponsors here on St. Pete by Night. She is offering up one artwork, one art piece of a single character, fully colored, all done up. If you've seen her work before, it's absolutely incredible. In fact, there's an example of the work on the screen right now. But she will do one character art in a variety of styles for absolutely free if you win the giveaway tonight. All you have to do is put the hashtag champ in the Twitch chat, and you will be in the running, and we'll do the drawing and giveaway for that by the end of this broadcast tonight. But definitely recommend, if you haven't entered yet, go ahead and put in that hashtag champ now to win that free art piece. And it's not limited to World of Darkness. It can be anything. D&D, any fantastical thing you can think of, she'll do that for you for free tonight. Let's talk about Port Saga because I have been completely engrossed with it this week. Like I have been listening, and it is a non-stop, in-depth deep dive for me at the moment. Now, for those of you who have not had the pleasure of listening to Port Saga yet, it's available on all podcasting providers, Spotify. You can even stream it on Rachel's website, racheljwilkinson.com. But this is an audio drama. Unlike what we do here on St. Pete, unlike what you see on a lot of Twitch channels and podcasts, this isn't an actual play. This is effectively an audio book journey with voice actors, with sound effects. Like you pulled out all of the stops for this, and it is one of the most incredible listening experiences I've ever had. And I've listened to a lot of audiobooks, I've listened to a lot of podcasts, but this is incredible because not only is it a complete story told over 2 seasons with voices from many incredible individuals, but it's it's such a great introduction to the world of darkness if you've never experienced it before. But even if you have experienced it before, you're still gonna love it. Like it's such an incredible experience, and you did it in bite-sized episodes, which I would never have thought possible. 25, 30-minute episodes, which you'll find yourself listening to 8 to 10 of them if you're me, back to back. But what was the inspiration for Port Saga? What made you decide to do this? How you were talking about it being a 10-year journey? What brought this amazing magical thing to existence? That's the first question I can ask.
So the best way to put it is it's all Lysander's fault. I don't know if you all know Ducky. Ducky is the guy that voices Lysander. And I was doing a podcast much like this. It's called Life Fancy. It's not really around anymore, but I was talking about life and magic and science, and it was just me talking about things that were interesting to me. And Ducky, Aaron, he was a ghost tour guide in New Orleans. He's living in New Orleans, and he was a ghost tour guide at the time. And so I wanted to do this spooky October episode where he came on and he did ghost stories for us, and it ended up being great. But one of the things that he was talking about is either it was, I think it was after the interview or something like that. He just says, "Hey, I just wanted you to know I'm writing this audio drama thing. I'm writing this script. I'm gonna put this thing together." And and I said, "Please, if you need help, that sounds really exciting and fun, and I'd like to be a part of it." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah. I'll let you know." And it planted this seed in me. And I know I want to do something when I find myself incredibly envious. I started sitting there being like, "Well, why is Aaron doing it? And why am I not doing it? And what is this? And why won't he call me? And what's going on? And what?" Like, I started just kind of obsessing over this to the point, and I was doing a podcast at the time, to the point where I was like, I have to do this. It's the clarion call when I am manic with jealousy. This is
Yeah.
when
Oh,
I
for
know I
sure.
wanna do something. And so I was talking to Dain, and I just said, "Yeah, hey, I want, I feel like I could do this. I feel like between the writing, between the sound design stuff that I was learning through the podcast, I'm like, I think I could do this. I think I could do this." And he has an office on that shares a wall on the other side of here. And I went in and I sat on his floor and I was like, I think it needs to be fiction. I don't have any idea what I'm gonna do. I don't even know what are we gonna even talk about? What is it even gonna be about? I don't have any ideas. And you have to understand that there's a bookcase that I'm leaning up against as I'm sitting on the floor. And on this entire shelf is 40 vampire books. And I'm like, I don't even know what I like. What do I even know anything about? And Dan's at his computer and he just looks at me and he looks at the bookshelf and he looks at me, he's like, "You sure you don't know about something?"
You have no idea.
You have no idea. And I was like, "Oh," so that was the moment I went from I don't have anything to talk about to I'm an idiot. Of course,
Right.
I do.
I've got something. I've
I've
got
got
something.
something. Yeah. So the next question then became, why does it have to be a podcast? Why does it have to be an audio drama? What there's a reason why something is a book. There's a reason why something is a television show, or at least there should be a reason why it needs to live in that media. And so I was obsessing over and over and over about why it had to be audio. And that's how I got the Malkavian music, because it had to be something that was auditory. It had to be something that was connected to sound. And when I got that Malkavian idea, it was done. It was off to the races.
It
I gave myself goosebumps
it's so
because I remember that
incredible.
moment where I was like,
Oh,
"I'm a genius."
well, and I'm gonna go on a full on diatribe about that in a second, but like the way you put everything together with Port Saga, like you forget that it's an audio drama at a certain point because one, the descriptions are incredible, but two, the sound is one of the key elements that sets Port Saga apart from anything else is the way you use sound effects, the way you use music, like we were talking about before, like your knowledge of music and obviously the way music can bring about certain emotions or bring about certain feelings. You incorporated all of that into the entire process of Port Saga. So it is so important. It's like a character of its own right. The music is a character, the sound effects are a character, and they make it such an immersive experience that it could have been a movie, it could have been a TV show, but you have to listen to it with headphones. That's one of my biggest
Yes.
advice to people who are going to check this out is like put in some earbuds, put in some headphones and listen to this experience, because there's so many subtle sound notes and cues, and again, music. Oh, the music is unbelievable. So one of the questions we got from the community comes from Nori, who's a huge fan of Port Saga, who asks, did the story of Port Saga come from a played chronicle of VTM? Was this story inspired by a story you'd already told or characters you'd already worked with, or was this all from scratch?
It was all from scratch. So there were two things that I wanted to do. First, it was having that idea of why does it have to be an audio drama? And then the second was I wanted a Malkavian as a protagonist. It was the thing you always see the Ventru, or you always see the Toreador, and I wanted to see that Malkavian character front and center. And it was one of the characters that I had never had a chance to play in LARP. It was not one of the clans I had a chance to really experience, and I had wanted to, but I always ended up needing to do other things for 17 other reasons. But I was really kind of obsessed with Malkavians, and just I don't know, it was something that spoke to me at the time, and so those are the two things that I really wanted. And then it was just building that story from there and trying to figure out, what was the story of this character. And it all started with Titus. Like and it's so funny because what Titus started out and what Titus became are very different things. But the nugget, the seed from which it grew was this idea of a Malkavian who was mad with sound, was mad with music.
And you you executed so perfectly. I think one of the biggest things that can compliment you on is that creating a Malkavian character, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but creating a Malkavian character is such an intense and difficult process because it's so easy to become cartoonish, or it's so easy to go the opposite direction and not really give them any Malkavian flair, that they're just kind of
They just
sociopathic
happen
and
to be a
antisocial. Yeah,
Malkavian.
like Malkavian is just like a cast off addition to their character. You thread that needle so perfectly that you're getting enough of what makes Malkavian special, but also taking it so seriously and giving it such respect. And to hear that you had never played a Malkavian before this, or had any, real experience as a Malkavian, is incredible, because it was so easy to just go off the rails and take the wrong exit off the highway to creating a Malkavian, but you gave it such intensity. And again, I can't speak highly enough. I'm a Malkavian main. Malkavian's my favorite clan, and I felt like this was done absolutely to perfection in the character of Titus. What inspirations did you draw from in the creation of this character? What really motivated you and gave you the means to create such a character?
Well, I think a couple of things were going in my mind while I was working on it. Firstly, as you say, it's really easy to make a Malkavian zany. And being involved in LARP and being around a lot of folks that were role playing Malkavians, I saw a lot of zany
Oh,
Malkavians,
sure, absolutely.
right? And it was so frustrating to me because I felt like even though I hadn't had an opportunity to play a Malkavian, I understood the madness. I always think it's that section, I can't remember where it is in the Port Saga, but it's where it was talking about it's essentially how you can't communicate. And that was the part that I think was what made it so personal and why I started getting into the character, because it was like I hear this thing, but I can't say that guy didn't do it because he sounds like jazz, and jazz didn't happen over here. That was some, Baroque something or other. I know these aren't things, and trying to communicate these ideas to somebody. And I felt like a lot of times in my own life, I've tried to communicate creative ideas or just what my thoughts are. And I've had people go, like, what are you even talking about? And you sound insane, right? You
Yeah,
sound insane.
absolutely.
So, so I felt like that is how I connected to the character on a personal level. But also, I was just really fascinated with the idea of Auspex gone wild. Like, this is what I believe makes
Yeah,
Malkavians, is that their Auspex dial is cranked up to 45, and
absolutely.
so they are intuitively or psychically tapped into something and tapped into aspects of the world that nobody else can experience. And so they seem mad. I mean, that's
Yeah,
that like that's why, and they can't quite fit. So you take all of those feelings of not fitting in, you take all of those feelings of feeling like an outsider, and you have all of this stuff and this difficulty communicating. I mean, I sort of think, why did I become a writer? So I could communicate. There was some sort of block there, I think, that I wanted to explore.
yeah.
And then and then the daddy issues came along with it, with his sire, and
Well,
then and
yeah.
then I was like, and then I need to give him a
Well,
friend.
and then his
And
upbringing too, like his backstory is unbelievable. You go through the first, 4 or 5 episodes, and they're giving hints to it, but they're not really getting in depth until you get to what has to be my favorite episode, like episode 7, 8, 9. Holy shit! Pardon my language, but holy shit! The finding out all of that, kind of breaking open the box, pun intended, really just lets you into, because you can think the whole time, why wasn't this guy a toreador? He talked about being a music teacher, but then you hear about the origins, and it's like, oh, okay, I get it.
now we know he is what he is.
It's
Yes.
absolutely amazing, and again, it doesn't hit you over the head, which a lot of fish malks, a lot of zany malks do. They're just kind of throwing it in your face. This is such a subtle build to a crescendo, almost like a music piece where the intensity is just building, 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 and then it's unbelievable. Like, it is unbelievably done. And I think that your choice to incorporate music and incorporate all of that into it put a new spin on it, because a lot of people think of Malkavians as like, oh, they have voices in their head, and there's people, they're hearing things they're not supposed to, and you do talk about that a little bit, which I think is cool. But the fact that music was the profound, especially piano, was the profound essence of it, was the personification of it, and the way it came into play, especially when he was like thinking hard about something or investigating something, and then the music, and he would even talk about it. He's like, do you hear the music? Like, the music's starting to play. Unreal, unbelievable, and so clever, just really, really clever. And I think that the way you described it, all those things are things that people can relate to, whether they felt overstimulated in situations like crowded rooms or really noisy areas, or even just the sounds of nails on a chalkboard, or whatever the case may be. And I think that Malkavians are especially interesting because I feel they hear that all the time.
Oh,
That's just
probably. Yeah.
life to them. And it's the normalcy, and it takes something really intense to kind of break them of it, or even take them to the next level. And again, I feel like you do that so well with the music, because he's obviously experiencing things throughout the entire story, but when the music comes in, it's like it's really swelling and really taking him even further to the edge, or in the deep end, or whatever the case may be. And it's so well done. I can't say more than that. It's so well done. What so you wanted to tell a story about a Malkavian and make them the protagonist. What was the inspiration behind the way you made out the rest of the court? Because you've got the Venture Prince, you've got the Toreadors, you've got the introduction of the La Sombra from Chicago, which I thought was really, really good for a V5 Chronicle, especially. What was the inspiration behind these other people, and did you take those from people you knew, or from characters you read about, or anything like that?
So I have to be honest, Port Saga ended up becoming the LARP I wanted to play in. And so all of these characters became characters that I wanted to see it in in my game. You know, it's like I wanted to show up. So it was, and I also wanted Port Saga. One of my goals was to introduce Vampire and Vampire V5 to new people, to somebody who hadn't like who had yeah, I know, who had never experienced it before. And I wanted it to be something that it was like, "Oh, you want to know about Vampire? Listen to this. You know, listen, check this out, see if you like it." And so I wanted the court and these characters to be quintessential. And so that was the important thing. The prince was always going to be a Ventru, and it was always going to be a Toreador that was pissed about it. You
Yeah.
know, like there was and they were always, you know, like that's was always going to be. It was like the Bruja was always going to be the Bruja, you know. So I wanted to take these stereotypical versions. They're all really, really examples of their clan in some of the most stereotypical ways, and then give them that added depth that helps form the uniqueness of their character. So there's a lot of, let's take this shell that we know about the clan. um People did not necessarily, occasionally they didn't have out of clan disciplines. They had their in clans
Yep.
mostly. They did all have sheets. I did end up making sheets for everybody. Yes. And so I mean, Titus's Malkavian flaw was auditory hallucinations. So
Oh,
you
God.
know, so and so they are examples, and I wanted people, I just wanted to say, here is what I think this clan is. Here's what I think. This is what I think these characters. These are you know, how I would like to see them betrayed, which I suppose is kind of control freak of me or whatever. You know, like
No, it makes sense
like I
though.
want to see a Bruja be a real Bruja.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to see these things. So it was characters that I wanted to see, characters I wanted to interact with, the LARP I wanted to be in, the you know, and I just um, that I mean, I don't know, it just kind of emerges. I
Well, and again, you touch on all of the major kind of elements of the world of darkness. You have your Toreadors Toreadoring, you have your Venture Prince, all those things that you said, but you put a spin on them that made them, again, not like a sledgehammer blow to the head, where it wasn't overly obvious, it wasn't unnecessarily like direct, it was subtle, but it still had all of those elements that it gives you a taste of it without being too over explained, without being too, lore dumpy. Because I think a lot of people get intimidated by World of Darkness and Vampire the
Mhm.
Masquerade specifically because we're talking about 30 years of written lore that also spans all of time and like goes through
Yes.
everything. And you touch on things with a subtle grace that if people were interested in it, they could go look it up. But if they weren't interested in it, they knew enough about it to understand the impact it had on the story. The way you handled, Theo Bell, the way you talk about Theo Bell in the story, you're not lore dumping. You're just saying,
No.
hey, this was a significant event that affected the overall setting. And anybody who wanted to know more could go look it up, could go
Right.
read all about it. But you got the important information out and did so in a way that wasn't too much. It wasn't overwhelming. And I think you do that so well throughout this whole story with the introduction of Usher and the Banu Hakim, the La Sombra coming from Chicago and their ties to the Sabbat, the whole Anarch and Duskborn situation. Like everything you handled with a subtle grace that can appeal to any kind of listener, that they're not going to feel like, oh my God, I'm getting a lecture on VTM right now. It's no, you're hearing a genuine story and you get what you need to know. And if you want to find out more, you can. And that's masterwork storytelling there because I've played in a variety of games, I've run a variety of games, and even I find myself, giving too much information. And I think the way to play Vampire the Masquerade, the way to tell Vampire the Masquerade is to give just enough to keep them wanting more. And I think you do that so well throughout this entire story. Because
Well, I wanted to storytell on two different levels. I wanted to be able to tell the story to the noob, like that need that, the green person, the person that doesn't know anything about vampire. I wanted to be able to tell a story for them, but I also wanted to be able to tell a story for the 30-year-old vampire fans, like where I can say, I can drop the name of a city,
Mm-hmm.
and those folks will know the entire backstory in a millisecond of what this is. So it's just it was a challenge. It was a fun challenge. It was something that I enjoyed, but throughout the whole thing, I was very conscious about, I got to tell a story on this level, and then I got to tell a story on this level, and not confuse either one of them.
Yeah. And what was the decision behind, or the motivation behind, making the episodes 25 minutes, 30 minutes? Like, you never really overstay your welcome. You left them in really nice, digestible pieces, which in this modern era, I think, is fundamental. You can't do 3-hour stories because we're all ADHD in some regard these days. I mean, you've got to have them be bite sized, and you do that so perfectly that you can. Oh, it's 5 minutes till the episode ends. Okay, I got to go to work, but I can finish these 5 minutes and then go into work and come back later. What was the motivation in that, and the planning behind that?
Well, so there's a couple of things that were involved in it. Firstly, the average commute is 22 minutes long. So one of the things that I wanted out of this is, I wanted someone to be able to push play in their garage, drive to work, and listen to the whole episode. And that doesn't necessarily work for everybody, obviously, but it was a nice kind of time to sort of, I don't know, reach for.
Yeah.
So as you said, it ended up being 25 minutes. Some of them became 30 because I got interested in what I was doing. So that sometimes happened, but the main reason why it is broken up is because I desperately want to write television. I don't know that I will ever get to write television, and it is something that I think I want. I mean, I would die a happy woman if I if I had got a television series and I got to write a television series. And so Port Saga, part of creating the audio drama, was a proof of concept, because I would tell everybody, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to make this, or I'm going to make this audio drama, or I'm going to tell this story, and I did not have anything to show anybody. And so I get like, oh sure, okay, good luck with that. And I'd be like, no, really, I can't. And so I had to use the means that were available to me. And I think if I was giving advice to anybody that wanted to follow their dreams or do the things that they want to do, it's start with what you have. That was the most important thing, is just like, I had Adobe Audition. That is what I had.
Yeah.
I had Audacity and Adobe Audition. Those were my two DAWs. That's what I've built everything on. And and so it was a way to say, I'm going to tell. I like to call it TV for your car. That was the whole point. I said, I
It
need a
is.
TV. I need a TV for your car. I need to show everybody I can write a television show. Everybody needs to know they need to give me a television show.
It absolutely is all of that, though, because the way that the pacing goes throughout the episodes, like, it does have a very episodic feel, but also an overarching story feel, which I think modern television is all about. We're not in the age of sitcoms anymore, where it's like,
No.
some zany adventure happens one week, and then the canon is completely broken by the next zany adventure next week. Like, it does have that overarching feel, but the episodic feel of it is, it does leave you wanting more, but you are satisfied with what you hear. You're satisfied, and you're at a point that you can wait another week to get the next installment, or you can binge it all at once and still enjoy it either way. And I think that this could easily be turned into like an anime or a television show, or make something completely different, but it shows that you do have the skills and the ability to do so with how well paced this story is. It is so well paced and so well put together, and it doesn't overstay its welcome, which is another thing we talked about, is that you did make 2 perfect seasons and made a complete story out of those 2 seasons. Was there any interest or any kind of temptation to try and keep the story going beyond the 2 seasons, or did you write those
Oh
2
no,
seasons
absolutely.
and say, I'm good?
So I knew that I had to end every season because I didn't know if I would have another. And so I was self-funding the entire project, and making audio dramas is not cheap. It is not cheap. And so, and I was doing it even on shoestrings, and I was, I was calling up friends being like, please play this character for me. Hey,
Yeah.
LARP friend, do you remember this? Can you please do this? So it was people giving of their time. It was me spending hours. I told you I lost 10 years of my life, only because it wasn't because I was working for 10 years. It's because I would stay up for 48 hours. Like, I don't know. I'm probably going to die 5 years earlier than I should because of Fort
Same.
Saga. Like, I
Same.
got no sleep. And so so I was doing all of these things. And I needed to have the money to do the next season. And unfortunately, one of these things that happens is if you don't have the money, you can't do the season. And so that is essentially, I had hoped that by producing the first season, I would be able to get World of Darkness interested in what I was doing. And the first season, they passed. They weren't interested. So I said, I'm gonna do a second season on my dime. And I also opened up a Patreon account. You probably still hear
I do
ads
hear the
about the
ads for
Patreon
it, but
account, and it doesn't
honestly,
exist anymore. It's gone. Like, one of my tasks is take the ads off. I have baked in ads. Take the ads off and re-upload, Rachel. I'm a busy woman.
oh, for
Uh,
sure.
so and I was basically on there begging people for money every episode. I'm like, hi, this is Rachel. I'm begging you for money. Please give me money so I can make these episodes. So I was able to kind of put together season 2 by doing the Patreon. But it was just too expensive. I couldn't afford to do it. It was thousands of dollars to make a season. And I
I'm
thought,
surprised it was that little, honestly. Like even thousands of dollars, which is a lot of money. Uh, this the quality of the product would speak to much more than that. So that's
well, I
another
appreciate
feather in your
that.
cap. But
Well, that's
sorry.
just called, blood, sweat, tears, and time. But yeah, so when I finished the second season, and I always knew I had to have an ending because I didn't know if I would have another season. When I finished the second season, I went back to World of Darkness, and I went back to those guys and I said, all right, now now will you give me a dime? Like, will you do and they could not, would not. I don't know entirely the situation, but they were not interested in picking it up. And so if they weren't interested in picking it up, I couldn't afford to make it. It needed to stay at the 2 seasons. I will give you this though. Season 3 was outlined. Season 3, there were hints of season 3, and I'm going to tell you here, we were going to Moonlight Bay.
Ah. So, are you sure this Patreon account is closed? It's not possible that it could be reopened because I will
No.
admit I'm late coming to the show. I discovered it when I found out that we were doing this interview, and I was so happy that I did. But now I'm dying for more. I really, really am, and it's while it is 2 perfect seasons, and I can be content with that. Rachel, holy shit! Like honestly, okay, if not Port Saga, would you have any interest in another show, starting another project and going on this journey again? Or is this kind of you're happy with where you've moved on from that part of your life? Or is it something you would revisit again?
Well, so here's the situation. So remember how I said I went to World of Darkness and I said, "Hey, are you guys interested in this?" And they're like, "No, we're not interested." I ended up going to Justin Achille, and I showed up in his DMs, and I was like, "Hey, can you do anything? Can you help me out? Is there a door that you can open?" And he could say, "Well, let me see, let me see. I'll see what I can do." This was around the season ended, I think, right before Thanksgiving. So it was that second season. It was around Thanksgiving. It was going into the holidays, and he said, I'll see what I can do." And I just kind of held my breath a little bit and went through the holidays. And January 1st, Justin Kelly announced that he had left World of Darkness to open Studio Hermitage. And I went, oh,
Ugh.
like it was just, I was like, okay, well, that's that. That was the death nail, right? That was the nail in the coffin. We knew this was done. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, thank you so much for your time. I realize you're founding this new company. This is not something you can help me with, but thank you so much. And he said, well, we're looking for a writer. Why don't you apply for this job? And so I was like, sure, great, absolutely. And so I think that was like February. No, it was January at that point. It was January 2023. I announced on Twitter that there would not be a season 3, to much disappointment to a number of people. And then I went to this interview, basically, and this they hired me, shockingly. I should say shockingly. They did hire me. No, it was great. And they hired me because of the audio drama. So if nothing else, it got me a job. And now Our Brilliant Ruin, which we've just put out, the entire core rule book is free. I will tell you guys that you can download it off of Drive-Thru RPG. There is going to be an audio drama for it.
Okay.
Yes. The marketing guy will not let me talk about it beyond the fact that it exists. And I have a cat attacking my microphone. Giving one moment.
No problem.
First of all, you're going to get Dain to say
hi.
Hi.
For those who don't know, Dain was Titus in the audio drama, so if you recognize the voice, that's where it's from. And Dain, I have so much that I want to compliment you on. We did a little bit of this before the recording because I got the pleasure of meeting you then, but your performance of a Malkavian is above and beyond one of the best performances I have ever heard. The subtlety in the voice, the emotion laced in the voice, and my favorite episode, which we talked a little bit about, episode 8, The Descent into Madness, in the box, for those who have listened before, who know what I'm talking about, and those who haven't, look forward to it. Absolutely unreal, incredible. And I guess I'd ask you to sidetrack here from Rachel a little bit, because I'm going to fanboy for a moment.
By all means.
What was that process like? You talked a little bit about the recording of that specific episode, but what was the process like? You said that you had gone to graduate school for acting, that you have done all of this, but what was it like taking this audio drama and inhabiting this character that Rachel had, put into words on paper that you had to bring to life?
Sure. I mean, I was familiar with.
You want to step up
Yeah,
here?
probably. I was familiar with Vampire the Masquerade. I had played it when I was a teenager. I had played it in college. I had LARPed. I had been part of that whole sphere, and I mean, it was sort of a no-brainer for Rachel to do it. And when she sort of was developing this character, and we talked about Titus and sort of what kind of a character he would be, and we made it very clear from the get-go that he was not going to be this.
You wanted a badass elder.
Well, yeah, sure.
Who doesn't? Come on.
They're very fun to play.
He's like, I want to talk like this. That would be amazing.
But finding his voice took a little bit of time, and sort of his sort of temperament. But after a while, playing him for a couple episodes, it sort of is like putting on an old coat. It's very sort of easy to do, and you sort of to just sort of drop in. And the nice thing about working with Rachel here at home is, if she didn't like a take, she'd just tell me to do it again. Sometimes she would take different bits, different takes, and sort of Frankenstein them together into the thing that she was trying to create. And then sometimes I get an opportunity sometimes it's just my lines, and sometimes she would have another actor in the room, and we get to play off of each other a little bit, which is probably the most exciting, because there was a nice sort of balance between sort of gamers and LARPers and professional actors, a couple of whom are local in Houston. So I managed to grab a couple of them in. But yeah, my two favorite episodes is eight where he goes crazy. But in the second season, it's episode 14 when he's running around with Father Frank, and that's my
Yes.
buddy.
No spoilers.
It's fine, but that's portrayed by my good friend Sean Patrick Judge, and it's essentially just the two of them, for most of the episode.
Well, and he got originally Father Frank got originally introduced around that episode, like I think it was episode 7 or early episode 8, where we find out about the character and the connection the two characters have. Which again, no spoilers, but amazing tie into the backstory. I think that's where we actually discover where Titus comes from, and just going through all of that, then taking it to the box where we really take a deep dive into all of it. Absolutely incredible. Now, my next question would be, were you a fan of like noir mystery dramas? Because you have a cadence and a voice as you're playing Titus of the detective, or like of the PI on the beat, who's like, having to deal with these femme fatales and all of this. Like, you encompass that 20s like investigator voice in your performance of Titus. Was that intentional, or did it just kind of come out that way and form that way? Because it was so
I think it
flawless.
developed a little bit over time, but I also understand with audio drama, it is so different because every single syllable has to be heard by an audience.
Yes.
It's the only thing they have to go on, right? And Americans are really, really good at taking their sentences and driving them right into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so for audio drama, you sort of have to slow it down a little bit, but it can't be so slow that it becomes robotic, right? So it's a weird balance between audio work that feels very natural, but is also every single syllable is heard.
Right.
And so, especially for those long monologues, right?
Don't complain about the long monologues.
Those monologues took a lot of work
to get out.
Those monologues took a lot of time. Because we might spend 30 minutes just doing sort of one giant long paragraph, just to sort of delve into those emotions, but also to make it very clear. So to take a breath and say a line all the way to the end, and then to take a pause and sort of go on.
Well, as intense as the recording process must have been, it comes across so seamless and effortless. Like, it feels genuine. It feels like this is an inner thought process. It feels like the emotion laced in it. You can't tell that you're exhausted as an actor. You can't tell that you're frustrated. Like, you perform it that it feels like we are experiencing it simultaneously as the character. Like, it doesn't feel like it's just secondhand. It feels like we're going through it.
So the one note
Yeah.
I was given for all of the narrative aspects is to treat the microphone like a friend that I am telling a story to, right?
You're talking to the other person
Like-
on the other side, yeah.
And that made it a lot more conversational, and I think it also made it a lot more personal.
Right. Well, and
Right.
it felt like we were characters. Like, you even in episode 8, more than I think anything before that, you make us characters. Like, you ask us to help you. And in that moment, it's like the desperation, but also the mind melting, breaking apart. It encompassed what I view the Malkavian network to be more than anything else. Like, that was a defining Malkavian network moment. And then again, no spoilers, the way the situation resolves itself says that maybe it was. Maybe that's how the situation resolved itself, but it brought us in and it made us so invested. I mean, the whole story does from the moment it starts to that point and beyond. But that moment specifically, if you can make it to episode 8, if you listeners at home, if
You can make it to episode 8.
you
Come
can,
on, guys.
you can. But when you make it to episode 8, let's put it that way,
Thank
you
you.
will not be able to get out of it after that. Like, you will be stuck, because that episode, those moments, and again, you're pleading desperation in your voice at that moment. You're hooked. You're stuck. Like, you're in this with Titus now, and you are not getting out until it concludes, until it's over. And again, as someone with an acting background, not nearly as robust and amazing as yours, but with a little bit of an acting background, to be able to do that so genuinely is a testament not just to your training but to your raw talent, because it is such a moment. Like, it is such a defining moment in that show in its entirety. And I can speak so highly about everyone else's performances, but you carry this show. And that moment is the moment of the point of no return for listeners. They get to that point. There's, how can you abandon the story after that? Like, you feel a genuine kinship with Titus, and that is a rare thing. I've seen other shows, movies, television shows try to accomplish something to so little result as you do in that moment and in that performance. And I apologize for going on so much.
It's
But
really easy when the writing's really good, and I think that is mostly just a testament to, like, this wasn't banged out in a weekend, right?
no,
This
of
was,
course not. No.
this was many
So
drafts.
talk me through,
Say
because
that with some exhaustion.
Well, she'd finish it, then she'd be like, "Read this," and I'd be like, "Oh, this is good," and she's like, "Nope,
not good enough.
section's
Didn't
not
come out
good."
the way I wanted.
Yeah.
But take me through, because again, episode 8, my favorite episode, undoubtedly. As a Malkavian main, my favorite episode.
St. Petersburg by Night is brought to you through collaborations with our partnered vendors: Wolfpack Dice, Ember Fox Dice, Dragon Ink Dice, Bear the Bard, Champs Tramps, Penshi Artista, and Chromatic Creations. Links to our partnered vendors, as well as our Twitch and YouTube channels, can be found on our website, stpetebynight.com. The official theme song for St. Petersburg by Night is Vampire by Faith and Failure. You could find them at faithandfailure.com. You can follow St. Pete by Night on all socials with the hashtag St. Pete by Night. If you wish to support our program, you could do so at coffee.com/St. Pete by Night to help keep the stories rolling.
Take me through the recording process of that one episode, because you had said it was kind of like 3 days of trying to knock out that section. And it's 3 days well spent. Well worth it.
Version?
You should probably do your version. So there's actually a funny story. It's a Kubrick quote. And these actors would go to London and they'd be like, "Oh, Kubrick is such a perfectionist. He does 50 takes, and and by the time they go back to the U.S., it's 100 takes." And then they go back to Kubrick and they'd be like, "Why'd you make him do? You're such a perfectionist. You made him do 100 takes." And Kubrick's like, "Well, I didn't want to do 100 takes. I wanted to do one take, but they weren't giving me what I wanted."
Yeah.
So I think for what would happen is, we sort of do it in chunks, do it from start of this beginning, go all the way to the end. I have to usually stand to get my sort of diaphragm working the way it should, and then which takes a lot of sort of, and you have to be very still, and you have to sort of be careful, and I don't drink enough water, so I get very dehydrated, so I have a lot of spit clicks, which then have to get sort of cleaned
Don't
out.
get me started on the spit click. Don't get me started.
But like we would try it one way, and doing a nice long big paragraph is hard, going from start to finish without messing up a line. And sometimes I'd get there and sometimes I wouldn't, and she'd be like, "Nope, do it again." And so just because most of that episode is just Titus, it took a long time.
For sure.
And I think Rachel sort of knew that because of sort of the subject matter, and there was a lot of foreshadowing to get to this moment. So I think we took most of our time with episode 8.
That's but it's well worth it. Like I said, it's the defining hook. The whole story is a hook at the beginning, and you do start to be like, okay, and you start to figure it out. But that episode, more than any other, I re-listened to it a couple of times, but in preparation for this interview, because I knew I was going to talk about it at great length. It's from the performance, the writing, the intensity of the moment, the importance of the moment. it was worth the effort, like above and beyond worth the effort, because it's such it's I'm struggling to grasp words. It's a magical moment in storytelling that, as a 25 plus year dating myself storyteller, I yearn for those moments in storytelling, especially at a table where it's live and I don't get to do retakes or re-records. Like I would love to see that kind of emotion transferred in a moment, and I feel like it was worth it. And I think that's probably the beauty of the audio drama, is the fact that you could do 100 takes to get it right because of how important it was. And it's so incredible. My next question for you would be, had you had
actually,
oh yeah,
Go get
oh
I
go
just
go
get the
go
cats.
go get the
But,
cats. Thank you so much for
but
stopping in.
drop me a line if you want to talk about it later.
I
but,
do
that's the second
actually. I could have a whole episode with just you, but thank you so much for stepping in.
It's our
Wow.
cat drama. So
Thank you so much for letting us have that moment. So you did get on World of Darkness's radar, though, clearly from Port Saga and from your passion for the project, to the point that you got to write for a few of their books and Love Bites, which is all you.
yeah.
You're the only credited writer on that, which is a rare thing in World of Darkness. Most things have anywhere from 6 to a dozen writers involved. How did you get on their radar, and what was that experience like? Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? How did that exchange happen?
Well, they did reach out to me, and funnily enough, I was their second choice. I'm
Blasphemy.
sorry, I'm just spilling so much tea tonight about this. But yeah, so I started writing in Requiem. If you remember Vampire the Requiem. So I ended up there's a developer who I had known, and was trying to get in, and I basically begged her in her kitchen. I was just like, let me write something. And it was this tiny um it's the rewrite of the Brood. I don't know the deep cuts again. If you go into, I think it's Vampire the Requiem, it's this gets into whatever the second edition that they did. There is a rewrite of the Brood, and there is a story in the front of that. And that was the first writing gig that I got. And understand that this was just begging someone in their kitchen.
Right, yeah.
And then, like, I'm not really going to pay you much money, so I don't care. I'm going to try to do this. And writing for Vampire the Masquerade uh was actually, it started at Vampire the Requiem. I actually LARPed Requiem. I didn't come in Masquerade. I was in the Requiem days. And Vampire the Requiem, when World of Darkness was putting that out, they did a novel contest. And I don't know if you remember this novel contest.
I do.
Yes. So I tried to win the novel contest. And so I think I made it to, I did the whole chapter. You had to submit certain things, but it was like you submitted some chapters, and I clearly did not make it. But I was that's so I had started writing there, and that was many years ago. But I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to write for them. I'm not going to be able to write these novels, but maybe I'll do LARP scenes. I did downtime scenes, and I would write in scenes. And so the developer friend that I had was like, "You've seen, I can write something, please." And so that's how it started. And then I was able to get other jobs. It was getting one job gets the next job. And the most important thing, if you want to write for any game company, you got to do two things. You have to put a writing sample together. And then if you have the opportunity to write for them, if you get an assignment, and it will be tiny, it'll be the test assignment. This will be, can this person actually deal with this? Meet your deadline. It almost doesn't matter how well you write if you can meet your deadline. And so one of the things that writers and editors struggle with all the time in game writing is finding writers who will meet the deadline, who will take the word count and get it in on time. So if that is something that you're interested in, that is my biggest advice. If you can get it in on time, you will always have a job.
That's fantastic. So you started with Vampire the Requiem, but then you ended up in Cults of the Blood Gods, as well as, Let the Streets Run Red, and then, of course, Love Bites. How did were you brought back? Did they reach out to you
Yeah,
again
so
and say,
yeah,
come
that's what
back
it
for
was.
this?
So like
Okay.
so then so once you start doing these jobs and you start out small, I think I started writing in 2018. 2017, 2018 might have been my first jobs. So, and those were just, again, 3,000 words, little tiny doodads
Sure.
of things. And then I had the opportunity to write the Gary, Indiana story and Let the Streets Run Red. And so that is, yeah, so if you do, it's the Rusted Jungle, I believe it's called. So if you have Let the Streets Run Red, Rusted Jungle, here, that was me. And so again, got all my words in on time.
Yeah.
Had did a ton of copy editing, so then the copy editor didn't have to do a bunch. And they're
Yeah.
like, she gets it in on time. I don't have to do a bunch of grammar checks. This is amazing. So the Cults of the Blood Gods came after that. And in Cults of the Blood Gods, the Munich adventure is
Okay.
mine. So I wrote the opening story. Uh well, so the opening of the Munich story is the frame for the first story. So it's taking little bits of that prologue from the adventure, and then Eddie Webb was writing a story as if it was sitting at the characters were sitting at a table that was at that dinner. And the Munich story, that opening, came from the original Giovanni book. If you remember, the original Giovanni book starts with, you go to this dinner.
Yes.
And yeah, so it was an homage back to that original Giovanni book of, you start this chronicle by going to this dinner. And so that's, and I was very lucky because the developer had said, we're going to give you, we're going to give you a city. And that's very freeing, because one of the most difficult things of being a vampire writer is all of the lore. And it's all of the things that have already existed in the world. It is the things that have already been created by other people, and how do you fit them in, and how do you break one thing, you make another thing, like
Yeah, you
it's
don't want to
so
contradict what's already been established back in
right.
1996 with something that you're doing now. Like, you really have to hopscotch your way around, and you have to be very knowledgeable about what you're doing. So yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, and so I mean, going back to Rusted Jungle and Let the Streets Run Red, I mean, that was there, that chronicle in a way kind of exists already in the previous edition. So it was being aware of the characters that existed, being aware of how that ended, and building on it. So having somebody say, hey, we're going to give you the city to do whatever you wanted, was very freeing and exciting. And I was like, okay, I can think about this in a different way. So the parts of the Cults of the Blood Gods was that one. And then the build your own I can't, religion.
Yeah.
Build
Yeah,
your own cult.
basically, yeah.
Yes, so the build your own cult is the other thing that I had contributed to
Oh,
in that book.
that's so, what a cool opportunity, honor. I mean, if you're a fan of the product, we all had pipe dreams in the 90s of like being able to write something official, to have something canonized, and those opportunities were few and far between, especially in
Mhm.
those days when we didn't have internet and couldn't look up job listings and like see how you even get into this process, how do you even get involved with this. So to be able to come back around to it all these years later and get an opportunity to do that, and to just be given the freedom of like, here's the city, do what you want,
Yeah,
like,
that no, that was exciting. That was also, but I also tell you that was the assignment was 50,000 words in 1 month.
okay, so a lot of work too. Yeah, so
Yes.
there's there was a lot to
Yes.
go along
So
with that.
yeah, so it was a lot of words. So it was so what I was saying is, if you can write with speed, meet your deadline, and do it in a way that is pretty clean, um, this was sort of just, we need words. Who is the person that can get this done? That's going to be Rachel. Here you know.
That's incredible.
And then I was joking about Love Bites being their second choice, but that's kind of, I mean, it's exactly kind of what happened. They had got somebody that were going to do this with, and they couldn't do it anymore. There was some sort of problem. There was some sort of something that happened. And so they came to me and they said, "We need an entire thing in a month." And I said, "You'll have it in a month, right?" And
Yeah,
so that's what that's what happened.
that's that's absolutely amazing. And honestly, reading over those passages, like I did reread Love Bites, it shows the depth of knowledge that you have, but also a way, again, much like the show, it explains it to people who are new to it. Like Love Bites was
Mhm.
released as an attempt and an opportunity for people to try out the game without fully investing, without needing,
Oh, yeah.
a
Mhm.
vast lexicon of knowledge, but it does still touch on and introduce people to these concepts. And I think all of the work that you did on Port Saga, on all of this, it's reflected in that as well. And your love for the setting, the system, the game is so apparent in all of your work. Like it's a love letter to the system, to the
Oh,
history
for
it's
sure.
given you, to the
Yeah,
connection it has.
absolutely.
My next question would be like, do you still get the opportunity to participate in anything anymore? Do you still get to LARP, or do you still get to play tabletop
Not
games or
so
anything?
much anymore. I do I occasionally get asked to write, um, and that's nice. I can't do all of the jobs anymore. I did just write a LARP, Embrace the Grave, and that is going to make the convention circuit. It'll probably be coming to a convention near you. It's being done by Unforgiven Productions, and it is a story about the Shroud. You are all part of the Hakata, and you have crossed into the Shroud to memorialize Augustus Giovanni and his remains, and that is what staves off the beckoning for the clan. So in order to you have to protect Augustus Giovanni's remains, and that's why you don't have the beckoning. And so the LARP is you form into any number of teams. You come from different cities and regions to have the honor of protecting Augustus Giovanni's remains for a year and a day. And so that's the LARP. It's a competitive LARP, but it's a competitive rules light LARP because you are kind of competing with teams. It's a sort of a vote yourself off the island or vote other people off the island kind of competitive LARP. So
That
yeah.
is so amazing for so many reasons. But one, more than anything, World of Darkness has infuriated me with the inability to just give me a straight answer about why certain things are the way they are. Like,
I don't
why?
know if that will be
Why
the
don't the
official World of Darkness answer. It was
I
the
don't
official
care. It's
Rachel
good enough for
answer.
me. It's better than good enough for me because at least it's something. Like they tell us so little, and that's actually a reasonable answer, and I am gonna make that canon in our world because it's an answer. So I can't wait to get my hands on that because that sounds amazing. But that's so cool. Like that's what a cool opportunity. And I was looking at also on your resume, you were a big part of the Night in Question, which to this day kind of stands as one of the premier LARPing opportunities, still running to this day, amongst Vampire the Masquerade. What was that experience like? I know we're jumping all over the timeline
Oh
here,
no,
but there's
that's
just so
okay.
much to talk about.
So yeah, the night in question, Matt Webb called me up and said, "Hey, you want to write a LARP?" And I was like, "Sure." It was I was hungry for any opportunity, and so Matt and I, gosh, I think it was over the course of 2 or 3 months, but we did a lot of brainstorming. We were brainstorming the different groups. So you would have these, you would be part of a small group. He had come in with the concept of the rave, and he knew that he wanted to focus on this Sabbat attack of Austin. So essentially the LARP is the Sabbat are mass embracing all of their cannon fodder that they're going to send into Austin the next night to attack the Camarilla. And so it was a rave that all these people were going to go to, and they did not know it was going to be a bloodbath, right? So yeah, so we spent 2 or 3 months. He came in with that concept. We wrote a lot of these characters. And one of the things that I had done is there are monster tickets. There are these bespoke kind of tickets that he sells with it. And so one of the things that I did for the first, I think it was 3 years, was I would write personal plot lines. So your war pack, your custom war packs, your feeding groups, your whatever would be part of a plot that I was writing custom for everybody that was coming in. And so you would say, "Hey, we want to be a pack that does X," and so then they would get their bespoke plot. And yes, so it was a feat
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. Well, and I'm especially impressed. Writing for LARP has to be even more difficult than writing for TTRPGs because you can like set out a storyline and mark out points, but in LARP there's so many unknown elements. Like
Yeah.
you don't know if a particular group that might be fundamental to your party even shows up, that the people that they had in mind to play something. So you almost always have to put in contingency after contingency after contingency of what could happen and what could go wrong. And I'm so impressed that that's something that you enjoy doing, that that's something that you have an ability to do and a willingness to do, because I know even from a storyteller perspective, nothing goes the way you planned it.
No,
Nothing
no, but you
ever.
know that walking into it.
Yeah.
You know something, you know, what is it? No plan survives contact with the
No.
people or whatever.
No. Absolutely not. Like I'm actually I pride myself on being an improv storyteller in the fact that I don't make a plan, because what's the point? Like I have an idea, but I
Mhm.
never make a plan. So even on my week to week sessions, I'm just kind of going with the punches. I know where we want to end up. I know kind of important events that I want to happen. But whether they happen out of order, whether they happen, whatever the case may be, that's fine. So when I hear people talking about preparation and getting ready for their sessions and putting in hours and hours and hours of preparation, I'm just like, don't you know that it's never gonna work? Like,
Well,
why?
it's I want to stay on your subject, but I do want to talk about very briefly Our Brilliant Ruin because of that.
Yes,
Because
please.
yes, so Our Brilliant Ruin is the new project, right? And again, you can get the whole book, um, but the mechanic system is designed so the storyteller never rolls dice. The story, you can do a pickup game, you can get a game going. I timed it in less than 30 minutes from picking up the book to playing. And so that and I wrote it for storytellers. Like the whole idea of having this dice system and the way that it is created, and it's a narrative based system, is that the players are making the decisions and the storyteller, I'm not going to call it minimal effort because it's not minimal
No, of
effort,
course
but
not.
it
No.
is minimal prep. You don't need prep to play this game. So, yes. So, and I did it because when you're the forever DM, you understand. So you want to make it as easy as possible. So so I understand the plight and I understand exactly what you're talking about. And I think that as we make more tabletops and as we kind of, I don't know, build on the things from before and become more modern or become more innovative, it is, how do you make this easy on the storyteller? Because the storytellers are who are driving the games. The
Right.
storytellers are, they're the ones that love the stories, that love it enough to buy all the books and do everything with it. So it's sort of like, how can I make a storyteller's life as easy as possible?
Oh, that's a
Because their
dream.
excitement will translate into excitement with the players, and then as players, so this is my secret agenda, to turn everyone into a storyteller, because the players can then see how easy it is. Because I have been in positions where somebody is role playing or they're storytelling a game, and I'm like, I couldn't remember all of that. I couldn't begin to do all of that. You Jason Carl is exceptional,
Master.
exceptional when it
Hmm.
comes to this thing and it comes to storytelling. But I think it's also intimidating to anybody.
It is.
that if you know that it becomes hard to see yourself in a storyteller position. And I would like the opposite. I would like players to be able to say, this is an easy thing to storytell. I'm hanging out with my friends for some reason. Let's have a pickup game. Because you ever heard of a pickup game for TTRPG? You know, tough to
I've
do.
tried to sell people on the idea of a pickup game, but it never works, and it always ends up being something much more intense. But yeah, that's incredible, and I love the idea of a pick up and go system where, like you
Hmm.
said, 30 minutes. That's incredible because it's not you need to print off a bunch of character sheets. You need to like go through this whole character creation process. Like that is an improv gamer's dream. It doesn't even have to be improv storyteller, just improv gamer's dream is that we can just jump into a story that's unbelievable. And I definitely will be picking up the system myself and recommending everyone else take the opportunity to do so because that's a dream come true. And to your point about intimidation in becoming a storyteller, I think that one, the overwhelming amount of lore absolutely is
Oh yeah.
intimidating. Even though I tell my storytellers and I tell the people that are interested in becoming storytellers, you don't really need it. Like you could tell a story in Vampire without knowing all that stuff. It helps. It can, dress up your stories, but you could even just tell a local coterie just trying to take care of a problem story without needing a bunch of lore. But two, the idea of celebrity storytellers and DMs has made it even more intimidating because now
Oh
there's this
yes.
unbelievable expectation and standard that's been set that you have to be a Matt Mercer, you have to be a Brennan Lee Mulligan, you have to be a Jason Carl, and they don't understand one that took decades of work for them to get to
Oh
that
yeah, you have to
level.
understand. Jason Carl and I were IMing each other back in the cam, right?
Yeah,
Like talking about storytelling. So he's been at it 30 years, and all of these guys are. And I think also for me personally, no offense, but they're all men.
yeah,
And so
it's a boys
there's
club for sure.
it is absolutely a boys club. And so one of the things that I wanted to do, and one of the reasons why I made Port Saga with the podcast, is that I wanted it to be also for women.
Mm-hmm.
And women are the greater demographic for listening to audio dramas. They're mostly it's it you know it where it appears to be that gentlemen watch YouTube, ladies listen to audio dramas, or they listen to Audible or something like that, or Spotify. And so my whole thing was trying to bring women into it, and also for storyteller sides, try to also give women the tools to become storytellers. And I think that any chance that we can have to support them into becoming the next Jason Carl, it's you want to see somebody doing amazing things, right? So, and I think it is intimidating when you see these actual plays and
Yeah.
you see these people that have done it for years, and then you think I could never do that.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. Well, and a majority of our team, storyteller team here, is female, which I'm very
yeah.
proud to boast and I'm very proud to say because they're incredible. And we've been very fortunate to have them. And I love Import Saga, though, that the main character, the protagonist, is male, but there are a lot of really respectable, strong female characters in the
Oh yeah,
story.
he's
It's
surrounded by
incredible. Like
women.
it's so cool the way it's done because again, like I've said about everything else, it doesn't beat you over the head. It's not preachy. It's not like it just feels organic and natural. And so it's incredible the way that it's done. And I'm glad that that's the driving force behind it because I do think, especially Vampire, but World of Darkness with a feminine touch is a beautiful thing. Like these female led stories. Our prince was a female in the first arc. I think that it does have a grace and a dignity to it, and that that female element just makes
Hmm.
it that much better. We were talking about clothes. What was the first thing we talked about? Was
Yeah,
like
I know.
outfits and attire because it's important and they make it important. And I love that. I love that so much. Um, so what other project are you working on? What else have you been up to and what can we look forward to coming from you? Because this game sounds incredible, but I'm sure as you said you're very very busy, so there's probably some other things
Yeah,
in the work.
yeah.
Anything you can
So
talk about?
well, So Dune, we could talk a little bit about
Let's talk
Dune.
about Dune. Yes.
Yes. We just put out, well, I shouldn't say we just put out. I mean, it was with the second movie. We put out a new Adventures in the Imperium book that focuses on that sort of uh post Paul Prophet uh time period. But so there's tons of Dune adventures that you can get into. I was obsessed with Dune. I I just was. I read every book. In fact, it was really funny when so they made the announcement that Dune was going to be an RPG. And what did I tell you about my jealousy?
Yep.
My jealous when I become a green monster of horror mania, being like, why am I not doing that? Why is this person doing it? I tend to get some drive. And so I contacted Modifius, and they had, at least at the time of submission, and I believe they still do, they still have a submission process. So if you would like to write for tabletop
Mhm.
RPGs, please look at Modifius Entertainment. They're always looking for writers. So I wrote, I turned my resume into a character sheet, and I wrote my little cover letter. And this was to Andrew Peregrine. If you ever get a chance to meet him, he is a delight. I said, I was born for this moment. That was my first line. I was just like, I have read every Dune book that has ever been created. I have written this. My one of my goals, I think it was 2019, I had written 300,000 words in a year. I was like, I can write 300,000 words in a year. I will never miss a deadline. And I like, put me in, coach. And it was like, this girl is weird. I don't know. I don't know about this. This is very strange. So anyway, he did reach out to me. He said, well, give me three plot pitches. And that's essentially what we'll do if you end up wanting to be a Dune writer, another writer, we'll say, give me three plot pitches. Then if those three plot pitches are good, which are just like one or two sentence things, put those into a paragraph. What does the adventure look like? What is this story that you want to tell? And if that looks good, then it's the outline. So there's this sort of process that you go through. And he took me through that same process. And so I had sent him these pitches, but he did say to me, I'm so sorry, our team is already full. Like it's the core rule book. I'm sorry.
Right.
And I was like, wah, 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 which happens
Of
sometimes.
course.
And so I just went back to writing little vampire stuff, no big deal. And then he contacted me and said, well, we just lost a writer. You have 2 weeks. And I said, put me in, coach.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
Like,
Let's go.
so in that core rule book, the game mastering chapter is the chapter that I wrote. It's I didn't write any of this. They already had people in the source material, so I was just, how do you tell a story? How do you incorporate this at your table? And what are some safety tools and things like that for running the story? And so that was my toe in. And I mean, and that's sort of the story of everybody. Like, you get this little tiny job, you get your toe in, and then they can't get rid of you.
Yeah, then they're stuck with you. And honestly, like, you're the perfect person for it, because story structure and telling a story and everything, like, that's on full display in Love Bites, in Port Saga. Like, you have a profound knowledge of it. And so that's a great opportunity for you, because that's you're a master class in that. And so after that, you've just been off to the races with them since. Like,
Oh
you're
yeah. So yeah, I was writing it, so then I was writing adventures with them, and eventually became their canon editor for is it was a fact checker essentially
right.
for did this happen, and where's the part in the book that says it? So I was really good at looking up quotes from the book and saying, hey, no, it really exists, I promise. Uh and eventually then became their line editor too. So but that was over the course. I mean, understand that's like a 3-year path. I
Sure,
didn't
of
they just
course. Yeah, it's not every 6 months you get a promotion. Like, it takes
Yeah, I
time.
didn't like just slide in there and be like, what's up, guys?
Yeah. All right. What
uh
appealed to you about the Dune universe specifically that made that an obsession, though?
people, and that's the thing. Okay, so that's the same thing with vampire, that's the same thing with Dune, which is, by the way, just vampires in space. And
True.
Yeah, Dune is just vampires in space. I just be prepared for that. But it's I like the stories about people and and choices that people make. And so I have, much to my chagrin, not been terribly drawn to fantasy and traditional fantasy. I have not really played much D&D. I think I've played once. Um and I understand the metaphor that can come with it. I understand what the different species do and how they can contribute to stories in different ways. But that has never really spoken to me. Instead, what has spoken to me is the trials and tribulations of a human being and of what it is to be a person. And that idea of humanity is very important to me. And if you notice in Port Saga, humanity was a big deal
Huge,
throughout.
huge. I
Yeah.
mean, they outright address it with Titus talking about sacrificing humanity against the anarchs and stuff like that. Like that's anyway. Sorry, I could go back to Port
No,
Saga,
no, no,
but
that's
please,
okay,
you're
but
right.
that's exactly the thing. So that's and so that's really what sort of drew me into this, that I still like the idea of fantastical worlds. I still love sci-fi and I still love urban fantasy and all of these things. But I needed this for me, maybe it's just because my imagination was not as good as other people, but I needed it to be about humans, human people, and I needed it to be about regular regular people. I don't know if it's a podcast. That was quote fingers,
Yeah,
everyone.
regular. Yeah,
Regular people in extreme situations and facing incredible challenges, and then the question of course, going back to vampire, if the vampire showed up and said, I will make you a vampire, would you do it?
yeah,
Love that question. I always say,
absolutely.
give me a year. Give me a year to get like super hot.
Let me get some stuff wrapped up and get myself in a position that I want to be frozen
Yes,
in
like,
time.
and then we can talk
Right
about it.
now, no.
No, please don't make me be like this
Please don't
forever.
make me do this right now. Unless you're a Samitsi and we can figure it out later. Don't do this to me right now.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's just what I'm drawn to.
No, but I think that's what really drew me to World of Darkness too, was that it was relatable, it was tangible. Like I've played lots of fantasy games, and I think that it's just a step too far. It's a step too far from what I can truly comprehend or understand. So it feels fake. It feels like it's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's fun. It's fun to, but I'm still picturing Lord of the Rings, or I'm still picturing things that I've
Yeah.
seen before. My imagination and my suspension of disbelief goes just so far. Whereas in World of Darkness, it's very grounded. Like these
Mm-hmm.
are places you can go. These are things you can see, and then it adds the element of monsters, but still it makes it tangible. And I think that's something that the fifth edition is doing a little bit better than some of the wild volumes in the old editions with like really outstanding stuff. But it is tangible, and I think that the human experience and the journey, that cerebral journey, is such a good story. Like it's such a good story that can really invest people. And again, going back to episode 8 of Port Saga, that is a
Right.
cerebral, relatable journey that Titus is going through. Just go listen to episode 8, everyone. I don't know what to say. Listen to the whole thing. It's so good. I can't talk about it enough. But yeah, I'm with you. Like those are the stories that I really cling to, are ones that I can see myself in. I can't see myself in the fantasy stories. I can enjoy them, I can have fun with them, but it's
Yeah,
still just make
absolutely.
believe. Yeah, absolutely. And Dune, I think you're right. One thing that I like about the Dune setting and the vampire setting is, who's really the good guys? Are there any real good guys? That's debatable. Like everybody has a motivation. There's always, there's kind of a pallor on everything. So it's
Well,
hard
it's
to
all
say
about
who's
that
good.
competing agendas.
Yep.
There's interesting stories about competing agendas and people who believe they are doing something that is best, even if it has not great consequences as a result.
Right. Consequences, repercussions, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
like, what do you do to survive? What do you do to thrive? What do you do to make sure that you have what you need? And then you start getting greed and power and
Yep.
influence. And I think I am really interested in those ideas too of what do people do with power, greed, pride, all of these things that are, you know, the fatal flaws. I guess they call them fatal flaws for a reason.
Absolutely. And one of the running themes in almost every game I run is what's your price?
Yeah.
What is it gonna take to make you do something that you say you wouldn't do? Because in all of the fantasy stories, it's these big chinned heroes with these unbreakable morals and all these things, but that's not real life. That's not the
No.
real world. Everybody has a price, even if they're unwilling to say it out loud. And knowing that price is, or someone else knowing that price, is a sense of weakness, which is a huge element in World of Darkness and Vampire 2. Is like, how much are you willing to let people know about you? You have to be really guarded about information, and like one showing sign of weakness could be your complete downfall. So it's so good. It's so good. I have some rapid fire questions I want to get through because we're almost about to hit the 2 hour mark, and I would love to have you back for a follow-up interview, maybe in 4 months' time, because I know we got to schedule things out. But there's so much more I could talk about you with. But I want to make sure these people who ask these questions do get
Yes, absolutely.
addressed.
And I'm happy to be here to answer all of the questions. And thank you, everybody who has been here the entire time. So, well, and anybody that's been here for any of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cole asks, what is your favorite clan and why?
Oh, okay. Do you want the real answer or do you want like the on camera answer? I
Give
guess
me
I should give
both.
both.
Give me both.
The let's see. The on camera answer might be La Sombra, maybe Toreador. Those are pretty those would be good choices. I think the Toreador fits well just because I'm generally artistic and if that's an easy skin to wear. I the story of the La Sombra as far as the tribulations, like coming out of pain and that is very real. Again, trying to process 30 years of failing an audition. So
I get it. I get it.
it seems, I mean, look, saying that now feels ridiculous, but it's kind of true. So, so those for sure. But if I'm being really honest about myself, it's Ventru. It really is.
Really?
It is about control and domination and uh wearing a crown.
Being the
So
top of the mountain.
being the top of the mountain.
Absolutely.
And I will say, since we have spent this time together, one of the reasons, again, why Vampire LARP and Vampire Gaming drew me is because it's competitive,
It's
and I am
extremely
competitive,
competitive and
and
cutthroat, and I
so
love it.
yeah, and so that was one of the reasons I was playing. I was like, I'm gonna politically machinate all of these people into their graves. So
Oh, that is amazing. And it's so true too. Like, even in a coterie game, yes, there's some teamwork, but wouldn't it be nice to stab someone in the back? Like, or to find out, like, oh yeah, you guys go in the front door and then let them get killed while you go in the back. Like, oh, it's so great. It's so great.
and
Um,
you can't do that in
you
D&D.
can't do
That
that in D&D, and if you do, nobody will play D&D with you anymore. But if they
no,
don't come
I
into
know.
Vampire expecting it, they're not doing Vampire right.
Well, and I
Uh,
just saw in the chat, shape-shifting traveler. Venture might sit on the throne, but Lasombra is controlling, yes. So my two answers are Ventrue and Lasombra. Like,
yep, yep, makes sense. Well, it's the same clan on two sides of the coin. It was the Sabat Lasombra and the Camarilla, or sorry, the Sabat Ventrue and the Camarilla Ventrue. One has shadows, one has a crown. But it's two sides of the same coin, so it totally makes sense why they would both call. What is your favorite World of Darkness splat or publication to date?
oh, well, I mean, vampire, like
Well, yeah.
individual thing, or
What do you have, like, a obviously vampire is the favorite splat, but what is there a certain book that you really enjoy? Like, some might say Cult of the Blood Gods, or some might say a specific clan book, or a specific, by night, like Chicago or London or something like that. Do you have a specific book that would be your go-to favorite of the vampire universe?
not necessarily. I think I actually prefer some of the Requiem books. I think
Okay.
some of the Requiem books were written really well, and I always felt like Requiem did not necessarily get the fairest shake in the world. You're frowning at me. Why
I
are
was
you
a
frowning?
Requiem hater because I could not handle them resetting the canon. It hurt my head too bad. But
Yeah, well, and
a
that's
lot
what
of good came out of Requiem. I will say that much.
the thing that Requiem had going for it though, was the clan and the covenant and the city. And the ability to prioritize these things based on an individual vampire. So the one thing that Masquerade was very much about was really about your clan. Masquerade
Hmm.
has always been about clan.
Playing politics for
And
sure.
this is the first time that you could say, all right, I have a political or ideological philosophy. I also have the blood, but I also have a commitment to my city. It was a very city state
Yeah.
focused game. And so it led an extra dimension to competitive LARP in that way,
Hmm.
because you couldn't necessarily guess what everybody's abilities were. If you really wanted to be a mechanics junkie, if you wanted to min max a sheet and you wanted to kill box some people, you couldn't guess what they had. Like you couldn't,
Yeah. There was no way to
build the
know.
sheet based on what you know about it. But also you just couldn't uh you didn't really know what people were up to. You didn't really know what their real agenda was. And I think one of the fascinating things about playing vampire is that secret agenda is like I say one thing, but I'm doing another. And Requiem just packaged it in such a way that it made it very interesting and difficult
Well,
to
and
guess that for
you
people, you
you
know?
do see some of those elements reflected in V5. Like V5
Hmm.
does incorporate a lot of mechanical but also setting elements from Requiem. So I'm glad it exists because I do feel like it made the game better. But I
We were
remember
best friends until you said
I
that.
was so brokenhearted when I picked up that book thinking like World of Darkness can't be done. Pick up the book, read it, and I'm like, son of a bitch. um, and if it had been marketed as a new game, because this was before it was marketed as something different, they were still saying, like, it's World of Darkness. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
is
know.
it? Look, no, slam, throw. Like, I would have given it a fair shot if they were just like, this is a new game. This is not World of Darkness. This is a new game. I would have given it a fair shot, but it hurt my heart so bad. And that's not to say I wouldn't revisit it now with,
Well,
15
understanding
years
that it's a separate thing,
separation.
but I agree with you. I think that was perhaps a marketing mistake. Like I
That was the
think,
biggest misstep. Like,
that they could have said, here's this new version, here's this new thing that you can do. So if I have to pick a book, I would say Vampire the Requiem, the first book that came out. There's
okay, okay.
nostalgia there,
Yeah,
plus I think it introduced some interesting ideas.
that makes me happy because that is a contrary point to a lot of people I've had on the show. I've had a lot of people come on and not feel the best about Chronicles of Darkness, and to hear the opposite point is good. I
Well, I
appreciate that.
also I wrote Chronicles of Darkness Adventure 2. I can't remember the name of it now, but I think it was like Time Comes Round, I think something like
Okay,
that.
okay,
Yeah, so you can check that out too, but that was a Chronicles of Darkness thing.
okay. Uh, Bardic asks, what helped inspire writing Love Bites? What were the challenges in putting it together? What's your favorite piece of that story?
Oh, my favorite piece of that is the Cleopatra. Like absolutely. I mean, Zelda was a Cleopatra.
Yep.
That was like I did not write that cult. I don't know who wrote that cult, but whoever wrote that
Genius,
cult, I
though.
got to give props to right now. If you find out who it is, email me.
Yes.
Um, but I loved the idea of Nosferatu, who have just gone full regalia,
Yep.
and that was the inspiration too for Zelda. That it was this Nosferatu who is just extravagant, and so that was definitely the favorite part. I knew that there was going to be a Cleopatra in Love Bites, like before I even knew what the story was.
Like
I was
that's
like, this
it's
is gonna
gotta
happen.
be. It's gonna be in there. Well, and I could go on about Zelda. I think Zelda's a fantastic character because it incorporates all of the elements you love about a traditional Nosferatu, but does have the flair of a Cleopatra, which I think is fantastic. Another reason to listen to Port Saga, everyone. Um, Jay asks, what aspect of World of Darkness inspires you the most?
What
I think
aspect
we
of World of
kind of talked
Darkness?
about this is the human condition, is like the
Yeah, I think it
humanity
is
of it.
probably the humanity. And it is also probably just the idea of immortality, but immortality in this caged way that there is, I mean, there is a desire to live forever. Uh
Absolutely.
the fear of death is baked into people who want to play vampire, like that's a real thing. And so but you have to do it at such a sacrifice.
For sure. I love that about the game is that it's like, yeah, you get to live forever, but guess what? Forever is boring. Like they're honest about it. Straight up. They're like, yeah, it sounds great on paper, but it kind of sucks.
Yeah,
And they
but
show
that's what's
both
like, you'll
sides of
never
that.
see the sun again.
Yep, yep.
You're gonna drink blood from people.
All
Like,
the
is
ones you
this
love are gonna die. I've wrote
everyone that you ever knew is gonna die?
yep.
And it's so that's like, do you, if you want to live forever, that's fine, but you're gonna do it with this sort of, I don't know, moral quandary.
Yep.
So I just think that's really interesting.
Well, and I love in World of Darkness too, everyone is doomed. Nobody nobody gets a happy ending in World of Darkness. Like not in the long term. Maybe at the end of a chronicle, yeah, things work out, but in the long term, you're all doomed. Whether it's the beckoning, whether it's the inevitable rise of humans to the point that they destroy you, whether it's another vampire that destroys you,
Yeah.
Gehenna. You know, and this is the same with Werewolf, this is the same with Mage, this is the same with Wraith, like all of them have it pre-written in there that like guess what, it's a bad ending for you
Yeah.
regardless of what happens, and I think that's so cool too. It's kind of mentally trippy and a little depressing but super cool. And then for the final rapid fire question, and then we'll do the giveaway and wrap things up because I've taken so much of your time tonight and I appreciate you insanely. uh Cole also asks, when you were casting for Port Saga, what was your process? Did you know who you wanted for the different characters? Was it all planned or did you hold auditions? Now, we did talk about how
I
sometimes it was
All of the
begging
above.
people for help, but yeah.
All of the above. So, Dain was Titus because he was free and he was in my house. So that's what it was. It
And
was
he was perfect. He was
and he was
perfect.
perfect, and he was great, and so that is how he got that job. I asked friends. Um, so the Ventru Primogen in in Port Saga is actually one of my best friend's husband. In fact, my best friend dies in that opening scene. That's
Yes. Okay. Yep.
yes.
I'm in.
So so I was calling her and I was like, "Hey, are you willing to do this?" And she said, "Sure." But I can't remember. Her husband's name is Greg. I can't remember if he answered the phone or I had to talk to him about something else. But he gets on the phone and he had this voice, and I was like, "You want to do a podcast?" And he's like, "Sure, absolutely." And then he got so nervous. What I didn't know is he had a cold at the time, and so he was like, "Does
I
she
don't
only
actually
like my
sound
voice
like that all the time.
because I because I actually have lost my voice?" And I was like, "No," and it was fine, and he was great,
He
and
was
he was great.
amazing. He was so good in it.
Smarmy,
So
Ventru,
slimy.
love
Perfect.
him. Yes, great. And so, and then I gone to a couple of other people. So, Ryan Omega, who plays Ezra, I said, I'm looking for people. I know you know people, and that is how I got hooked up with the woman who plays Zelda and Dante.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Riley and Andrew Alandi, and so I did not know them. They were total strangers, but I was able to make some connections through some other people. And then however, for the second season, I did hold auditions for that. So I did a email submission kind of thing, like a Google form submission, which was based on, I had new characters that I needed to cast, and so it was trying to find folks to do that. And I got to tell you about Andrew Biss very briefly, because I don't want to give too much away, but I'm just going to say he plays one scene. And so imagine, if you would, the Google Forms are, that the
Yeah.
Excel sheets and things. And so I basically had my version of this. I was doing it through ClickUp, but it was, it's the same thing. And I click play, and here's this man's voice, and he's maybe 50, 60 years old, something like that. And I'm like, what is this man doing in my inbox? And I had even asked, oh, what's your rate? Because that was also, for me, it was,
Sure.
if you put too much in there, I was like, I can't even consider you.
Right.
And he was going to do it for nothing. And I was like, I don't know who you are. We're going to have a phone call. I called him up, and he was a delight. He was absolutely, he was absolutely a delight. He was a former actor. He was a playwright who just wanted to do something fun. And the fun story I have about him is that he was actually in Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Okay, but pause, because he was the body stand-in for the cowboy. So he was not on camera, but he would be who would help set the light or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember who actually played him. Somebody might know. But yes. However, the actor, there's the scene where the hands hit the windowsill and the rats come over the hands. I don't know if you know this scene, but the cowboy actor did not want to do this scene, refused to do this scene, because it was one of these things that once they said go, he gets dropped. So you could have squashed a rat on your hand. Like it was pretty visceral. The actor wouldn't do it. So, but Andrew did. It's like, I will do that.
So that's
And
his
so
hands.
if you, when you watch that movie and you see those hands, those are Andrew Biss's hands.
That's amazing. That is so cool. And what a great tie-in. Like somebody who was in one of the penultimate vampire films, you know,
Oh
gets
yeah,
to
as soon as
also
he
do
told me
that.
that, like I was like,
Sold.
okay, well you're in. So, but again, I'm trying to keep it spoiler free. So
Right. Right. Well, and also something that we talked about, and we didn't even get to this. This is just how much we can talk about everything. You said that there was some voice changes between
Oh
season
yeah.
1 and season 2. So do you want to go into that now, or should we save that? Okay,
I
sure,
can.
go for it.
Yeah. So the voice change was myself. I fired myself. I am Marlo in the first season. I am not Marlo in the second, and that is a lovely woman, Marta De Silva, who is amazing and does incredible work with audio dramas. If you need an actress, please hire Marta. But the problem I was having was I could not edit the episodes because I could not get out of my own skin. So
I
I
get
would
that.
hear my own voice. I hated my own voice. I was like, I can't act. What am I doing here? And I was so obsessed with hearing myself as this character that I could not actually unbiasedly cut it. Like
Mhm.
I couldn't edit it without being too invested in my own vanity or being too, I don't know, it was way too much of a struggle. So I was like, I'm firing myself. I'm out. The other person I unfortunately had to say goodbye to was what, I can't even remember her name now. I have blocked her out. Uh Satine Phoenix
Mm,
was in the first season, and that did not go well, shocking no one.
right.
And so we ended up bringing Stephanie in to play our lovely Lasombra, and she was amazing.
Yeah.
So she is an Australian, and it was so funny. It was so funny because I was like, I'm not going to have you try to mimic this voice. Like
Right.
you're the two of you are not going to sound the same, and that is entirely okay. Um, but can you learn an American accent? Can we get close?
Can we
And
even? Yeah.
she went to American accent school to to clean up her accent, and we had to work on it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, and you'll hear it. Like, if when you listen to season 2 and you hear her, you can hear it, like some of it come through.
Yeah.
But she had worked so hard, and so I was also just so impressed by the people who wanted to be part of it, and everybody who was involved in it were vampire fans. Like, that was maybe not
So
necessarily
all
World of Darkness.
genuine, but still genuine fans of the vampire
Yeah,
medium.
yeah,
Oh, that's
and so
amazing.
and so they loved vampires, well, Marta, who played Marlowe, was, avidly playing
Yeah.
Vampire the Masquerade, and so it was just a lot of people that really loved it. I got to talk about Tags.
Tags.
Tags who became Locke.
Yeah.
So this is my very, very dear friend, and his name is Brad. And Brad is also Australian. He's from Perth. He is an absolute delight. But I was like, I'm sorry, I have to get rid of you in the first season. But I loved him so much as a human being, because he is one of the best human beings in the world. I'm like, I will recast you. I will find you a different
find
role.
something for you at some
We'll
point.
find something to do. So so Stephanie and Brad are my the love I have for Australians.
This is a passion project from everyone involved. Like, everybody you're listening to in each episode, they bring their A game. Like, I don't feel like anybody was obviously a desperation accepted voice. Like,
Right.
everybody really cared about this project, and even if you search for Port Saga on any social media, you'll see past posts from the people who were involved in these projects really, really heralding the project. And I think, again, that's a testament to you as a writer, but that's also a testament to you as a director and a creator, that these people felt so strongly about this and felt so invested in this, that this wasn't just simply, I'm the boss and you're going to do what I say. It was obviously a joint effort, and that's so amazing. And I'm just so happy we got the opportunity to talk about it in great length. I'm so glad that you were willing to do this. I really do hope I can have you back, especially, once we talk about once I try out the new system. I'm sure I'll have lots of
Well,
good
you gotta try out the new
questions for that.
system, yes, because like I said, that's the next audio drama that's coming out. It's going to be based on that system.
Oh,
And
I'm going to be on the edge of my seat for that audio drama, because, again, everybody needs to check out Port Saga. I can't stress it highly enough. It's 20 episodes, 20 half-hour long episodes. So you're looking at maybe 10 hours, which some of you spend in a day playing video games, myself included. So if you can sit down and put on this audio drama, I can't stress it highly enough. You will be hooked within an hour of listening at most. So give it a shot. It's on Spotify. It's on Rachel's website. It's anywhere you can find it.
It's on YouTube. It's on, yes. And in fact, I think if you search Mega Cut, you can get the entire first season commercial free.
Yep, they have the whole entire first season on one episode, so you don't have to hear the end credits or anything until the end. It's worth the listen. I can't give it a high enough endorsement. So before we say our goodbyes, I want to do the giveaway for our viewers who've been sticking with us all day. The giveaway tonight is from Champs Tramps, one of our wonderful, wonderful sponsors and an incredibly talented artist. You can get one free character drawing. It is not limited to World of Darkness. It could be through any setting in a variety of styles, including has-been hotel themed, including chibi themed, and including very, very realistic drawings. There's just a lot of opportunities there for you. So if you've been watching along, if you have been part of this stream so far, we are going to do the giveaway now. And the winner of tonight's giveaway is Mango McSalsa. So Mango, congratulations. You get one free art piece from Champs Tramps. You can just reach out to Champ herself directly on the server, and you will get one free drawing from Champ. Thank you so much for participating in the giveaway. We really, really appreciate everybody who's stuck with us throughout this whole episode. This is by far one of my favorite After Dark episodes so far, and I'm so glad that I got to do it. But Rachel, is there anything that you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to plug before we put a bow on this thing and call it a night?
Well, I just, Our Brilliant Ruin. Like I said, you can download the entire PDF for free. It's on DriveThruRPG. It's you can check out ourbrilliantruin.com. Also RachelJWilkinson.com. You can follow me on socials. You can there's some version of Rachel J. Wilkinson on all of the socials.
Everywhere. You really can't not find it. And actually, I'll plug it for you right now. first off, go check out the website, racheljwilkinson.com. It is a beautiful, very straightforward website. It's got an entire area dedicated to Port Saga. And then there's the portfolio. If you want to see one of the most impressive resumes, CVs, you'll be surprised to find out some of the things Rachel has been involved in. It's absolutely impressive. It's a quick look at the website. And again, you got Port Saga right there. So why not just give it, the 10-hour listen, because it's totally worth it. So yes, check out racheljwilkinson.com. And then obviously, go follow Rachel on Instagram. You can meet the kitty firsthand and you can see the wonderful adventures of Rachel on Instagram. That's Rachel.
And you can see when I got spoofed. Yes.
Yep, there you go.
Somebody started copying my account. I'm like, it's
not me, I promise. It's Rachel J. Wilkinson on Instagram, so you can go give her a follow there. And she's on Twitter, on TikTok as well, and everything else. They're all linked on the website, so you can find all of the official accounts on the website from there. But honestly, thank you so much. I can't say it enough. Thank you so much for taking the time, the 2 and almost a half hours that we've been chatting tonight, almost 3, but the time flew by, and I still have so many more questions I can ask you, so I really hope we can have you back. And obviously, give a big thank you to Dain. That was so cool for him to stop in and to be able to talk to the Titus. Love to have him on a separate episode as well, so maybe I'll hit you up because I could just talk to him about Titus and all of his acting things ad nauseum. But I really appreciate you for taking the time. It really means a lot to me, and I will definitely be pushing people towards Beautiful Ruin as well as Port Saga until my last breath, because it's incredible. It's
well, thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed the conversation. It's been great hanging out with you. I'd be happy to come back. So yes, I absolutely appreciate it.
We'll definitely make it happen. And if you ever get the itch again to get back into World of Darkness, you always have a place here. We would love to put you even in a guest appearance role, because that itch never goes away. It really never does. So if you get some time, we'll make it happen. But thank you everyone so much for watching tonight. Go follow Rachel and go follow St. Pete while you're at it, because I know we're going to get some Port Saga fans that are going to come watch this that might not be a part of St. Pete yet. So go follow us on all the St. Pete media down below and hop into the server. You can just be an observer. You can participate in World of Darkness games. We got a lot of content that is available to everyone for their entertainment. But that's it for us this week. Go see tomorrow night we've got Bloody Strings, a Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle. On Tuesday we've got Rage Across Tampa, our Werewolf Chronicle. On Thursday there's Don't Get Caught, another Vampire Chronicle. And on Friday there's What the Hell Is That, our Hunter the Reckoning Chronicle. And then next Saturday we will be back, and I believe we're talking to the members of the Blank Bodies podcast next week. So you can check us back out here on After Dark. But for Rachel, I'm Kent. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
This has been a St. Petersburg by Night production. After Dark is produced in agreement with the World of Darkness and Dark Pact. The host for After Dark is Kent. Visit our website at stpetebynight.com for more information about all of our productions and how you can become part of our community. Thank you for listening. Until next time, fangs, stakes, and claws out.